Hey guys, the first episode of Peacemaker Season 2 just gave me a huge clue about this Avengers Endgame level threat that James Gunn is building towards. And the good news is, I don't think it has a single thing to do with the multiverse. Welcome back ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy, and this of course is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in the first episode of Season 2 of Peacemaker. Now, before we dive too much into this episode and explain what I think is coming next for this universe, I just want to briefly explain this continuity for this show and where it actually fits with Superman and the other DC films that you might have seen. So this season is picking up right after season 1 of the show, which was of course a follow-up to James Gunn's movie, The Suicide Squad. But in the time since he made that movie, James Gunn has become the co-head of DC Studios, which is creating a new interconnected universe of DC films that gets rid of all of the old movies from the Snyderverse. So going into this season, there was some confusion because Peacemaker Season 1 technically took place in a different cinematic universe, the DCEU, which started with Man of Steel. And this new cinematic universe technically started with the Max animated series Creature Commandos, but that series referenced events from the Suicide Squad, which also took place in the DCEU. Now, if all that sounds confusing, good news, it doesn't need to be. James Gunn made a rule that if they reference something in the shows or movies, then it is technically canon.
What do you mean by canon? Like at war?
No, canon just means like whatever counts, events that actually occurred in this universe and not some alternate universe. And I love this technique of Chris using a career day to catch us up on the events of season 1. He mentions the time he fought Kite Man, which he referenced in season 1.
One of the world's most dangerous villains with only my 2 fists, my Desert Eagle, and 2 rocket launchers.
And he also says this kid is wearing a Canadian tuxedo because they're wearing all denim. Now we find out all of the most important information about Chris right at the top, like that he has a best friend named Eagly, and of course his tragic origin story is the day he accidentally killed his brother during a boy fight. Now this event started a chain of events that led to his racist supervillain dad creating the identity of Peacemaker for him. And of course last season Chris killed his dad and also introduced us to this quantum unfolding chamber. And notice how it also says previously on the DCU. So this is all so James Gunn can specifically show us which parts of last season are canon. But they did something fun here. Certain parts of last season have actually been altered or refilmed to show that they took place in this new universe. For instance,
maybe you could call in the Justice Gang. Maybe you could call in the Justice League.
But the most important change is that the Justice Gang shows up instead of the Justice League from the Joss Whedon / Zack Snyder film. Now last season, only Ezra Miller and Jason Momoa actually appeared to reprise their roles from the DCEU films, and the rest of the heroes were shown in silhouette. Similarly, this time only Guy Gardner and Hawkgirl actually appear and have lines, and they're both responding to Peacemaker's insults just like we saw last season.
What a meathead.
Screw that guy. You know he tells people I'm a puke freak?
Now the lineup of this Justice Gang included Hawkgirl, Mr. Terrific, Superman, and Guy Gardner, who we all saw in the movie Superman, but also Supergirl is on the team. Now, Superman is not an official member of the Justice Gang. He's just, always there to help out when they need him. That is according to the Welcome to Metropolis Jr. novelization that showed how he first appeared in the city. But Supergirl was the real surprise here. Now, of course, she showed up at the very end of Superman.
Thanks for watching him,
and she's about to get her own film. But this silhouette cameo shows us that she's actually been an active superhero on Earth for quite a while. Now, after the recap, we go to present day where Eagly is bothering Chris because he wants to go out and play.
Oh yeah, person, that reminds me.
Not now, Doug, after the video.
Alright, jeez.
Peacemaker is my favorite kind of James Gunn story because it's about broken people who need each other to feel whole. And these are relatable characters because, maybe you've all felt this way. Maybe you also feel like you're inadequate or anxious, or you struggle with your work-life balance or family trauma. Personally, I've struggled with all of those feelings, and that's what led me to therapy with BetterHelp, the sponsor of this video. I became a BetterHelp user last year because I was having panic attacks and anxiety. I was losing sleep over work and facing some huge changes in my personal life. But my therapist helped me to realize that I never really moved on from COVID. I still had social anxiety that had been present since childhood, but I never had the tools to deal with it. Because for a long time, I didn't deal with my problems because as a man, I was always taught to not open up to others. I also had an expectation that I had to be strong for the people in my life and not complain. But therapy taught me how to have the emotional intelligence to deal with my problems. The fact that BetterHelp makes it so easy to start therapy is one of the reasons I finally took the leap. So for somebody like me with social anxiety, it was so much easier to match with a therapist and talk to them however I felt comfortable. Phone, video, or even text message. So guys, if you are struggling but you don't feel like you can ask for help or don't know who to ask, risk. I encourage you to go to betterhelp.com/ScreenCrush or click the link in the description to get 10% off your first month of therapy. You won't regret it. Therapy changed my life, and the link is below. Now back to what I was saying. Now Chris is wearing a Tiger Tail shirt. Now this is a Welsh glam rock band continuing this glam metal obsession that he has. And their song, Love Bomb Baby, appeared in the first episode of season 1. And then he enters the QUC, or Quantum Unfolding Chamber, where his dad kept all of his gear in season 1. Now last season, this was treated more like a gag, but it's going to be a major part of this season, and maybe a big part of the future of the DCU, which I'll talk about at the end of this video. But I will say that after this episode, it's pretty clear where they're going for this chapter of the DCU and the big end game that they're heading towards. Now, I don't know if this is an intentional Easter egg, but this space does look like the back garage that we see in The Dark Knight. And I think this could be because this would have been filmed at Popsicle Studios in LA, which literally has this space listed as Batman's garage. That is according to Reddit user Not a Handlinger. This studio is also the setting for many music videos. Now, while Chris is in the chamber, this alien throws away a rodent. Now, in this episode, this is just a throwaway gag, but actually this moment is vital to the story because it establishes that this is a space that is used by people from many different realities. And the alien must be important because, after all, they do appear in the opening credits. Now, according to ScreenCrush's Lee Mazzio, the alien is sort of like a Daemonite from the Wildstorm universe. Now, that universe is also the birthplace for the Authority, which is a team of anti-heroes who are supposed to be a part of this first phase called Gods and Monsters. In fact, the engineer from the movie Superman is a member of the Authority. But this alien also looks like an Eschaton demon from Justice League Odyssey. Now, these demons manifested at the Source Wall, aka the divider between the multiverse, which appeared in the New Gods comics. And that would also align with Chapter 1 of the DCU. In fact, there's a lot of teases in this episode about the larger story of Gods and Monsters that we'll talk about as we go along. If the QUC seems complicated, just think of it like Monsters, Inc. There are doors that lead to many different places. So Eagly leads Chris to another closet door and another set of Peacemaker helmets, just like the rack that houses his weapons that we first saw in season 1. And remember, those helmets are now one of a kind because his dad was the only person who could make them. And then Chris steps into the multiverse.
Ah, jeez, person.
Look, man, I know a lot of people have multiverse fatigue because Marvel's multiverse saga has produced some pretty mid movies and shows. But the thing is, DC did the multiverse first in the landmark issue, The Flash of Two Worlds. This is when they established that the Golden Age Flash and the Silver Age Flash both existed in DC Comics, but they were just from different Earths. This led into the annual crossover between the Justice League of America on Earth 1 and the Justice Society of America who live on Earth 2. And actually, DC has rebooted their continuity more than once by using big multiversal stories. We've also seen this happen in the movies and shows. Over on the CW, there was a massive Crisis on Infinite Earths event that combined all the heroes into one universe, and in The Flash, Barry Allen messed with time and allowed Zod to conquer Earth before he created an even worse reality where George Clooney was still Batman.
You're not Batman. What's wrong with you?
So I'm actually glad to see James Gunn embrace the multiverse for this season, especially since the glimpse that we saw of it in The Flash was deep-faked, unethical, and pretty cringy. Now, in this new reality, we see that Chris's dad was actually a great guy, probably not a racist because his white dragon helmet is now blue. And because his dad wasn't a monster, Chris's brother Keith lived, and they all grew up healthy, wealthy, and well-adjusted. And we see that their team, the top trio, was given the key to Evergreen. So this is the city on the West Coast where Chris lives, which is located in Charlton County, a nod to Charlton Comics, the company where Peacemaker actually made his first appearance before they were bought out by DC Comics. And when he sees his nice dad, he says,
"You look like you've seen a ghost."
Now remember, the last time Chris saw his dad, it was kind of a ghost at the end of season 1. And this takes us to the new opening credits, Oh Lord by Foxy Shazam. And their song, Welcome to the Church of Rock and Roll, also appeared last season in episode 1. Now in season 1, the opening dance actually had deep symbolic meaning, and we broke that down in our video for the finale. But we can't really break down the symbolic meaning now because we don't know what happens in the season, so you can expect that dance breakdown at the end of this season of the show. But we do see some new additions, like Frank Grillo as Rick Flag Sr., Saul Rodriguez as Sasha Bordeaux, Tim Meadows as Agent Langston Fleury, and finally, Michael Rooker as Eagle Hunter Red St. Wild. Now, Rooker has actually appeared in almost everything James Gunn has ever made, you know, like this.
I'm Mary Poppins, y'all!
Now, from the opening, we see that this season is going to focus on the love story between Harcourt and Chris, and we also get to see her variant self very happy and wearing a dress. stress. And I bring that up only because in this episode she was diagnosed with
toxic masculinity,
which further shows how her variant self is going to be very different from the Harcourt that we know. And by the way, the man who diagnoses her is played by Vince Pisani, and he also was the guy who told Falcon that he had bad credit in the MCU.
Is there any chance, and of course you could say no, that I could get a selfie with your arms out?
Are you serious?
And now he's breaking bad news to Harcourt, who can't even keep a government job, so she has to go grave of Paula Schultz on her dashboard. Now, after the credits, we see 6 months later, which implies that this is taking place 6 months after season 1. But James Gunn did reveal in a panel that this season actually takes place 6 months after the movie Superman. So, if season 1 of Peacemaker and Superman were roughly happening at the same time, that would explain why the Justice League wasn't helping out with the alien invasion that was happening in season 1. They were all occupied with the events of Superman, and Supergirl was off getting drunk.
I'm not messing around. I'm doing important stuff.
Now, the song that Leota is listening to in the car is Don't You Ever Leave Me by Hanoi Rocks. And of course, this is the band that wrote the song, the 11th Street Kids. In season 1, this was a bonding moment for the team, and they named themselves after this song, cementing their friendship with a group text. And of course, the song is about never leaving the people you love, which is shown here when Leota and Chris still stand together when the rest of the 11th Street Kids have fallen apart.
Why'd they fall apart?
Well, because Leota's mom is Amanda Waller, who is like an evil, manipulative government operative. At the end of last season, she exposed her mom's illegal actions with Task Force X, aka the Suicide Squad, which ended up getting Harcourt blackmailed from any intelligence work. And to top it off, Leota's wife left her after she started her own security agency. Because Leota was never the badass of the team, which is why Chris sarcastically calls her,
Okay, Charles Bronson.
you know, of course, referencing the Death Wish series from the 70s and 80s. Now, in season 1, Chris gradually opened up to Leota more and more until she became his best friend.
You're my BFF.
And here, he openly confides in her, and he's willing to be vulnerable in front of her.
I don't know, just like I'm stupid. That I'm wearing a disco ball on the top of my head.
Okay, so 2 things. Chris thinking that all the other heroes make fun of him is why he went on Sphere News and made fun of Superman.
It's guys like this, they always got a whole bunch of dark, ugly secrets.
But also, this line is key.
I don't want to be a joke anymore, Rats.
Last season, he was haunted by the memory of when he killed Rick Flag Jr.
Peacemaker. What a joke.
And this moment triggered his childhood trauma when he was forced to kill his brother Keith. Peacemaker is an outcast who wants to belong, which is why he wants to join the cool kids, the Justice Gang. Now remember, the Justice Gang are the superhero group that we saw in Superman, which then consisted of Green Lantern, Hawkgirl, Mr. Terrific, and now their newest member, Metamorpho. In the movie, we actually heard them plug Maxwell Lord, their sponsor.
I'd like to say thank you on behalf of Lord Tech Industries for the opportunity.
And here, just like in Superman, he's played by James Gunn, brother of James, who you may not know was also the stand-in for Rocket Raccoon in Guardians of the Galaxy, and of course he also played Kraglin. Now, in the comics, Maxwell Lord also sponsored the Reformed Justice League that came together in the late 1980s, but in the comics, he's a villain. In fact, the character was even played by Pedro Pascal in Wonder Woman 1984.
Life is good, but it can be better.
Now, in this universe so far, he's less of a villain and just more of a rich, arrogant ass.
Lex Luthor style.
The woman in the rabbit costume is called White Rabbit, aka Jania Hudson from the comic Batman The Dark Knight. Now notice the plywood outside is covered in butterflies, a sly reference to the villains from season 1, and then here we see Crank Toys. Now this is from the Arkham games, and it's also a reference to the Batman villain Cosmo Crank, aka the Toy Maker from the Batman 2004 animated series. And I also like the Easter egg of this empty comic book spinner rack, because James Gunn probably grew up reading comics that he bought off racks just like this one. Guy is drinking from a Jitters coffee cup. Now this is the coffee company from the Flash Comics TV show, and of course it was also mentioned in the Superman movie during the kaiju battle right here.
The giant animal was first spotted early this morning in a Jitters coffee shop.
And then a Lord says,
Metahumans like the ones in our organization are becoming more and more distrusted.
Now this is a direct result of the ending of Superman. In that movie, Baravia was about to invade Jonapur, and the Justice Gang unilaterally decided to supersede international authority and step in. I think that as each movie or show in the DCU tells its own story, this is going to be the overarching story they're telling. People are starting to turn on the metahumans. In fact, I have a theory on how this can lead into the big event that will be the first crossover movie of the DCU, which I'll talk about later on. Now, when Lord is being a dick to Chris, he says,
we at the Justice Gang try to avoid casualties.
Which is ironic because Mr. Terrific killed the kaiju, but Superman wanted to save its life.
I was hoping we could capture it and take it to an intergalactic zoo.
Wait, are we going to the zoo?
No, buddy, I told you this weekend.
All right. cheese.
So Chris recites his catchphrase,
And I've always said I cherish peace with all my heart, no matter how many people I need to kill to get it.
which of course he first said to Bloodsport in the Suicide Squad.
I cherish peace with all my heart. I don't care how many men, women, and children I need to kill to get it.
Afterwards, Chris meets up with Harcourt, where we find out that the two of them did finally emotionally open themselves up to each other.
It happened, but it was also a mistake.
Now, hearing that their hookup was a mistake makes Chris feel like that he is the mistake, like how his dad always told him that he was worthless.
The wrong kid died.
And this is why his immediate reaction is to party like crazy. Look, two things about this kissy scene. One, I hope the episode has a parental warning on it, because a lot of kids that like Superman are just gonna start watching this show because it's colorful and, maybe they're too young to see like all the nudity. But on the other hand, I love that James Gunn is immediately showing us how the DCU has room for like a lighthearted, family-friendly movie like Superman, but then can pivot straight to an adult show swinging dong like this. I think the MCU is bogged down trying to be all things to all people, and Gunn is immediately showing us that every story in this universe is not going to be for everyone. This bodes really well for potential horror projects like Swamp Thing. Now outside, John Economos has him under surveillance. Remember, he was the guy in the chair for the Suicide Squad, and Chris ribbed him for his facial hair coloring last season.
Enjoy my food, Diebeard. It's not dyed.
And when he appeared in Creature Commandos, his beard was still 2 collars. But here, seems like he's finally got it evened out and under control. Good for you, John. Now, he was apparently spared Waller's wrath because he is still working for Argus.
Wait, what's Argus?
Argus is the government agency that used to be run by Amanda Waller and now is being run by Rick Flag Sr. Now, until recently, Rick Flag Sr. was a defender of metahumans. He led the Creature Commandos and he stuck up for Superman. Now, in the show The Creature Commandos, Flag didn't actually know how his son died. But now, Economos confirms that he knows Peacemaker killed his kid.
Does he know Chris killed his son?
Yes, so he's wasting taxpayer money having him surveilled 24/7.
This means that when Flag took over as director of Argus, he must have finally been able to read the classified file, which made him want to bring his son's killer to justice. But we've also seen Flag evolve over all these movies and shows. He went from defending metahumans and fighting alongside them in Creature Commandos. And in Superman, we saw him stick up for the Man of Steel.
Big Blue stopped the war.
But then, at the end of that movie, the Secretary of Defense told him that now metahumans run the world and not the government.
Glad you're not concerned about the metahumans, Rick. Because now they're the ones making the rules.
And now that he's in charge of Argus, it's actually his job to neutralize these metahuman threats before they get out of hand, which is one reason that Economos is watching Chris. Now to kill time, he talks to Vigliotti, who is back working at Fennel Fields, just like we saw in Season 1. Notice also that John has a Lord Tech phone, and we saw Lord Tech all over Superman with Lois's recorder and the printers and monitors that we see in the Daily Planet. Back at Argus, we meet Sol Rodriguez as Sasha Bordeaux. Now in the comics, Bordeaux worked as Bruce Wayne's guard under Wayne Enterprises after a stint in prison. But later, Bordeaux becomes Maxwell Lord's second hand in the government agency called Checkmate, which was a branch of Task Force X. Then Michael Ian Black returns as Clevis Thornwaite, the news reporter from the Sphere on KWE4, which was a news website that we also saw appear last season. Now, all through the movie Superman, we saw him spewing anti-metahuman views, and he even gave Lex Luthor a platform to spread fear about the Man of Steel.
I'm scared.
So this news report is showing growing tensions around metahumans, with these vague headlines on the side. New details emerge, public consensus grows over heightened measures, and we see people inside of security camera footage. Like, it's all vague, but it offers huge clues about the first big DCU crossover event that I think is going to finally form the classic Justice League. But again, more on that later. Now below the video, we see the description. As metahuman containment systems fail, experts debate the ethical and practical implications of how society should respond to superpowered individuals. And Clevis mentions,
"This is the third metahuman escape from Belle Reve or Arkham in the past 2 months."
Now Arkham is of course the institution for the criminally insane in Gotham City, where Batman's rogues gallery are constantly escaping. And Belle Reve is the prison where we first met the Suicide Squad and the Creature Commandos. But remember, at the end of Superman, they loudly proclaim where Lex Luthor was heading to.
Get his bald ass to Belle Reve.
So maybe Lex Luthor was one of these breakouts. Well, maybe it could be that Lex is going to appear in the Amanda Waller TV series, maybe making weapons for her and setting up Superman 2. But back to Argus. When they detect the energy signature of the QUC portal, they say,
"It's similar to what we picked up this summer in Metropolis."
The Luthor incident.
And of course, that's referring to the ending of the movie Superman. Lex Luthor discovered a space between realities where he built a prison for his political enemies and ex-girlfriends. And to get Superman's attention, he amped the portal up to 11 and nearly split Metropolis in twain. So Argus is going to be coming down hard on any dimensional threat. But also, Think about it. We just heard that supercriminals keep escaping from Belle Reve and Arkham. Maybe if Amanda Waller does meet Lex Luthor, she's just going to ask him to create a new prison for her in his pocket dimension. And in exchange, the government will drop all charges against him. Oh, and on this monitor, we can see the new logo for Argus that was created for the DCU. Now, when Chris decides to revisit the pocket reality, the song playing is Dreamer by Foxy Shazam, the same band that plays this season's theme song. And in this new perfect reality, we see this newspaper headline about the top trio defeating a rainbow creature. And guess what? That creature is actually from the comics, appearing in Batman 134 with the same colorful look. We also see a reference to them saving Gotham City from the Ultra Humanite. Now that is a giant ape with the mind of a super genius. He was an early Superman villain who also fought and defeated the Justice League in a multi-issue arc in the 1980s. Now, knowing that the top trio defeated villains that are normally fought by Superman and Batman makes me wonder if maybe the top trio are the only superheroes in this other universe, which would be another reason for Chris to love it here. There are no other heroes to make him feel inadequate. And then we meet the grown-up version of Keith, played by David Denham, who you might remember from The Office, and he says,
I thought you were in Bloodhaven.
Now, Bloodhaven is the sister city of Gotham City, and it's where Nightwing operates. It's never been in a movie, but it was name-dropped in The Batman.
Where will you go?
Upstate. Bloodhaven, maybe.
And then Chris gets to essentially live his dream night with his dad and brother as respectable adults who all love each other. And they tease him about interdimensional imps.
Chris was rummaging around the Munchkin dimension 8 doors down.
They're not Munchkins, Dad. They're imps.
Which could be a reference to Batmite, who was name-dropped last season.
I'd rather be with Batmite than you.
Who's Batmite?
So we go from Chris at his highest, intercut with Harcourt at her lowest, picking fights in a biker bar just so she can feel something. Now the bar though is called Gabriel's Horn, which is a reference to an object in the comics. The Gabriel Horn is a device used to open pathways between dimensions, just like the QUC that Chris uses in this series. And this is intercut with John Economos asking Leota for advice. Now this scene is a big info dump where we learn that Flag is the director of Argus, but more importantly, we learn what happened to the 11th Street kids. What shattered the indestructible friendship of a group text. Last season was all about this group of misfits finally coming together into a found family, but we learned that they have slowly drifted apart.
It's Peacemaker, you know? He's like...
your friend.
Well, that's pushing it, but I don't want to totally screw the guy over.
And when he says,
you're living in the worst level of Grand Theft Auto,
I think he was referring to this hideout in Vice City, which by the way wasn't pretty, but if you needed a save point in downtown, Scumhole Shack was the best spot for losing stars. Over in the Ultimate Dimension, Chris gets his dream room with everything he loves. A bust of himself, music, a badass guitar, kick-ass sound system. But here's the thing, everything in here is just a little off. It's not real. It's not native to who Chris is. For instance, Hanoi Rocks is spelled with a double X. Scorpions is spelled with a Z. And Def Leppard's album is Pour Some Honey on Me when everybody knows the actual album is Pour Some Sugar on Me. Also, the band name Cruel Intentions has been changed to Cruel Interventions. And go back to that Scorpions poster where if you look close, you'll notice this woman is your mom. Now, when the Ultimate Peacemaker gets the drop on him, notice how his dove is pointing upwards. It's subtle, but it's an indication of how this version of Chris has a life that is moving up, while our Chris's life is always on its way down. And this, of course, is made literal during the fight when we see that Ultimate Chris actually has the ability to fly, which doesn't end up well for him. In the hallway, notice how we see the other Chris's suitcase, showing that he just got back from Bloodhaven, which of course leads to the chase into the QUC. Now we see that this Chris has way cooler gear, including tracking ninja stars and a cool single Wolverine claw, but he ends up getting defeated by his own high-tech weaponry. So I wonder if Gunn is making a statement here about how the rich will ultimately fly too high and then be brought down to our level. But more likely, he just wanted to give this guy a goofy, accidental death, which explains why he dies funnier than Anakin's mom. And after the credits, there is a gag where Harcourt and Peacemaker keep ripping into 30 Seconds to Mars.
Yeah, jeez, anybody's better than 30 Seconds to Mars. That garage band I was in for 2 seconds is better than 30 Seconds to Mars.
Which, by the way, is risky because that is one dedicated fan base who I am not insulting at all. I am also not insulting 30 Seconds to Mars. I think they're a band. I definitely think they're a band. But all of this is likely a meta reference to 30 Seconds lead singer Jared Leto, who of course was the Joker in the original Suicide Squad movie. Now, James Gunn's The Suicide Squad was a sequel to that movie, but the Joker didn't appear.
Why not?
Okay, so a lot of the cast members complained about Leto, said he was way too method, he would send them gross stuff that was nasty and I don't want to talk about on here. But Leto's portrayal was also rejected by fans, so he was only ever invited back to the universe for a small cameo in a straight-to-streaming version of the Justice League.
He almost had me.
Now, this episode did a great job catching us up and also showing us the character stakes for this season, but it also revealed more information on the direction of the DCU. James Gunn has said that they will not have a huge multi-tiered release schedule until they know that each project has a script that is ready to film, because they are choosing to focus on quality over quantity. But Gunn has mapped out an arc for this franchise. This first chapter is called Gods and Monsters, and it includes projects like Creature Commandos and Swamp Thing that focus on monsters, but other projects focus on the gods, like Superman and Paradise Lost, which focuses on a civil war that occurs on Themyscira, home of Wonder Woman. But in this episode, we also hear all this background chatter about people turning on metahumans. And I think I know where this is leading, and it's not Crisis on Infinite Earth's giant multiversal crossover. In fact, I think this whole season of Peacemaker is to literally close the door on the multiverse so they don't feel the pressure to revisit it again. And this will also draw a distinction between the DCU and the MCU. So here's where I think this is going. In Superman, we saw how huge everyday threats are now treated as kind of everyday occurrences. For instance, like a giant kaiju attacking the city or dimensional imps threatening the world. Now, in the comics, DC first rebooted their universe in 1986 after an event called Crisis on Infinite Earths. This reboot kicked off with a massive crossover event called Legends, where a TV broadcaster named G. Gordon Godfrey turned the people against superheroes. In fact, the character of Mrs. Godfrey in this episode could be a reference to Glorious Godfrey. But most importantly, Glorious Godfrey was secretly a servant of the villain Darkseid. So Darkseid is one of the ultimate greatest DC villains ever created. Jack Kirby created him for a saga that he called the New Gods. He is the ruler of a planet called Apokolips, which is filled with monsters, and its parallel world is New Genesis, which is populated by a group called the New Gods. And this could be where the title Gods and Monsters comes from. Now, that series Legends ended with a new Justice League forming to stop Darkseid from invading Earth. And maybe that's how the heavy hitters like Wonder Woman, Batman, and the Flash will join the Justice Gang and then rename it the Justice League.
That's a cool name. They're in.
After all, James Gunn is a huge fan of comics from this era. In fact, he even said that his Suicide Squad movie was meant to be a continuation of the John Ostrander books from the late 80s. I should also note that Legends did reintroduce the world to Wonder Woman when she appeared to fight off Darkseid's invasion. Now, Warner Brothers has not officially announced a new Wonder Woman film yet, but there are rumors that it has been fast-tracked. Gunn did announce that Paradise Lost TV series, which is going to be about the politics and power dynamics of Themyscira, likely detailing the civil war on the island before Wonder Woman was created from clay. So I think that we're going to see all of this tension toward metahumans keep ramping up on these Earthbound stories. Now, other projects like Supergirl are going to take us into space and maybe tease Apocalypse's encroaching invasion into other planets. In fact, I'm wondering if Michael Ian Black's character, Clevis Thornwade, could actually be this universe's version of Glorious Godfrey. Just like Godfrey, he is a TV broadcaster who is stoking paranoia against metahumans. And I also think Gunn might be making some kind of statement about cable news channels and how they stoke people's fears in order to serve the interests of the all-powerful billionaires who want to control our lives. That's right, I think Darkseid is actually a metaphor for the uber-rich. But that's just the overarching story that's happening in the background. Above all, James Gunn is putting story and character first. And I love this show because I love these characters. They're all broken and they all need each other, and I can't wait to see how Chris continues to screw up all season long. So guys, that's our breakdown. What did you think about the episode? Do you like the track this is going on? Do you think this is a good continuation of Superman, or, you know, should they have just completely stopped at season 1 because it was so perfect? And what do you think about my Darkseid theory? I think it makes a lot more sense than another big multiversal story like Crisis on Infinite Earths. I want to shout out Lee Mazzio, who had a lot of really intricate DC Easter eggs that I had never heard of before that we added into this video. You can find his social links below, as well as, you know, my name, the whole team, everybody who made this. And don't forget to subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Harry.